a great transition too to the pros and the NBA because they just had an all-star game, and a heck of an all-star game it was, especially compared to the Saturday night performance that happened there. You know, as nice as it was seeing Obi Toppin win the slam dunk contest, it was pretty lackluster compared to the theatrics that happened tonight's game.
Yeah, I think the slam dunk contest has, in a lot of ways, the all-star game has become passe, right? You know, it was really important to have all-star games when you couldn't see the players play, you know, on a regular basis. You know, in the NFL, when you only got to see, you know, the Giants or the Jets play. And when they were on, nobody else was playing, and you didn't have Thursday night, you didn't have Sunday night, you didn't have, you know, in baseball as well too. You only watch your home team, so it was Yankees and Mets for us the whole way. The NBA as well too. You watch the Knicks. You know, now you watch everybody all the time. It's you know, every team has got a channel. You know, you got cable. They're all over the place. You watch them on YouTube. You know, everything is at our fingertips.
Well,
so
it's more than that, though. The All-Star Game, we concentrate on the game itself, and it stopped being about the game a long time ago. The All-Star Weekend is like a mid-season NBA party.
Right.
I mean, when we last time it was in New York was over 20 years ago, but that's
it was in
where
Brooklyn a few years ago.
Huh?
It was in Brooklyn a few years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Also true. We're talking about the Knicks.
In
No,
Garden,
it's
right.
98, 99, I believe.
Yeah.
Or 97, 98. I forget. In any case, it was around that time. In any case, it's just like the Super Bowl, all the side action that's going on, all the parties and the galas and stuff like that, just like the Final Four is kind of like a coaching conference. It's kind of like the winter meetings in baseball where people go for jobs. You know, you're if you're going to be interviewed for a coaching job, you meet the person at the Final Four. So
right.
It becomes more than the event becomes bigger than just the games themselves. And I think as an event, the NBA All-Star Game is put together pretty well. The NHL All-Star Game is done along similar themes. Why? Because Gary Bettman used to work for the NBA. Mm-hmm. So, and then MLB caught on because of all the All-Star games, Major League Baseball's was considered the best from the point of view of it being an actual game because the players played like it mattered, and baseball is hard to dog. Okay. Right. You know, what are you going to do? Just, you know, swing and miss at every pitch? I mean, you can't do it. Well, you can't play baseball properly unless you play it with effort. And, you know, you can, you know, goof around and, you know, just stand around in defense in the NHL or the NBA, but you can't do that in baseball. The ball has to be caught in order for the game to proceed. Otherwise, you'll be there all night. You want people to make good plays. You want people to make outs because then you get it done faster.
Agreed.
Yeah. Like I definitely agree with that. And also, I think there's less risk of, I mean, there's risk in every sport, but I think there's less risk in baseball of serious injury.
Unless you're Pete Rose creaming Ray Fosse at the plate.
Yeah. But there's so it is easier in that regard to put a bigger effort. And you have so many players that you're only playing a couple innings anyway, so you get your swings in and you get your pitches in, and then you kind of move on from there. Yeah, and I don't think any pitcher wants to be embarrassed either up on the mound.
Yeah, well, it's been a policy for decades now that the pitcher goes a couple of innings because their manager is saying, hey, I need this guy to make his next start. So, okay, this is his throwing day. Put him out there for a little bit, but don't you leave him in there too long.
Right. Yeah, and for the NBA, I thought really the revamp they had a couple years ago where you play to a final score now in the fourth quarter as opposed to it being 12 minutes, I thought was really giving this All-Star game new life because this is really the third year of it doing it, and it's been really entertaining all 3 years, especially today where you're essentially playing to hit the final score of 163, and LeBron James ended up knocking down a huge turnaround jumper through two guys to get it done, get his team to win. But, you know, the All-Star game has definitely, I think, been a lot of fun, and it's starting to mean more so than I think Saturday nights, just because of how much more entertaining it's becoming. The slam dunk contest yesterday was not great. 2013 or 2014, I forget which one. I think Paul George won it, but that one really sticks out to me as a really bad one. And yesterday's I didn't think it was that bad, but it was close.
Well, what's happened with the slam dunk contest is that when it first started out, the top players competed for it. The only problem is they're only going to do that for a couple of years, and then let the kids try it out. And it kept it fresh, which is good. Because just about everybody in the NBA can theoretically slam dunk, and it's the talent level is that high. I mean, Larry Bird couldn't, but most people could. Then it started to become basically a rookie affair, and you don't see any of the old guys competing for a title. It's like home run derby to a degree. Okay. A star player has to turn out a couple of times to give somebody else a chance. And as a result, yes, from the point of watching slam dunks, it's great. But the game has changed too. It's not about the slam dunk. The 3-point shot contest is more interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. As the players have gotten older, the best players right now in the NBA are waning. They're at the end of their career. So
there's a generational turnover, no doubt.
Yeah. Hey, but you're right about the shooting thing. We want to watch shooters shoot because you feel like you could do that. Listen, you can't dunk, you can't dunk. That's it. But when you watch somebody shoot, you say to yourself, I think I could do that. I think I could hit those shots. So, and then you watch them do it, and it's almost seemingly effortless. The way that these guys
who hasn't hit a 3-pointer in a 5-on-5 pickup game?
Right. Yeah. So you feel you can yeah.
That tells you everything you need to know. I've done it.
But you do when you watch the All-Star game. I will say you realize how athletic these guys are.
Oh yes.
When you combine all the really good players on the court together and you watch them, some of the stuff that they do, you're just in awe of it. It's unbelievable how athletic these guys are.
Yeah.
And when you go to a game and you look at them, you when you watch them on TV, you say, "Wow, these guys are tiny." They're not that big. They're skinny. And then you go to the game and you're like, "Oh my goodness, look at the size of this guy."
Yeah. Well, the other thing about it is that yes, the game has changed. Ironically enough, it's changed to the point where it's almost playing more like the women's game. The women's game has always been below the rim because there aren't too many 7-foot women around. The ball is smaller. They do layups. They don't do dunks, even though some women can dunk now. It's more of a down-to-earth, approachable game. And when Steph Curry brought the game out to the perimeter instead of above the rim, that made it more accessible, I think, to the public, too. The only thing it removed a little bit of was the mystique of these guys being such, super athletes and, superheroes and having superpowers way above superhuman powers, I should say. Fact is that Steph Curry has superhuman powers. He can hit consistently from half court.
I was gonna say that's definitely been the biggest thing. Just to change, I think, from me going from dunking to 3-point shooting.
But the problem though is that what's happening, and you see it in the games that Stony Brook plays. Everybody chucking threes and chucking too many, where you shoot 7%, because everybody wants to be Steph Curry, but they don't realize that an impossible shot for most people is routine for him.
We saw today hitting 16 3-pointers to win the All-Star Game MVP on 27 3-point attempts. Incredible.
Yeah, because they'll just hang out outside the arc and boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, and it's just him too walking into it or taking turnaround jumpers and going in. It's ridiculous. But I think transitions well too to the local teams, and we'll start off with the Knicks, is where you see that transition and you see that reliance, I think, on the outside game. And for something that's routine to really great teams like the Suns, like the Warriors, you're not seeing that, I think, in the Knicks, as we saw them drop a couple more games this week. First to to Oklahoma City and then obviously to Brooklyn on Wednesday.
This is the big disappointment with the New York Knicks because they dangled the carrot out again. Last year, under Tom Thibodeau, they looked so good. And it's like, hey, this franchise may finally be turning around. They finally got the right coach. They finally got the right mix of players. Then this year hasn't been anything like that. And the Knicks have not necessarily been subject to the roster problems that the Nets have had. The Knicks have just been inconsistent.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we're talking about Stony Brook and lagging in the second half. There's 3 straight games going on for New York to where they have a double-digit first-half lead or build a double-digit lead, and they end up coughing it up to the opponent. We saw it on Monday against Oklahoma City where they were up 10 and with 9:46 to go, and Baisley and Giddey helped Oklahoma City rally back and ultimately win that game. And obviously against Brooklyn, coughing up a 20-point lead first half against Brooklyn without Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
I thought the Nets were dead in that game because the Knicks owned it through most of it, and then all of a sudden swings the other way.
Steph Curry ended up waking up.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Curry, you're making shots.
I remember posting on social media when Harden was traded for, saying, I liked Karis LeVert and Jared Allen. Jared Allen was an all-star this year. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to wonder what if. Okay, because the Nets did get off to an excellent start, lost 10 in a row, so on and so forth. But if they had not traded for Harden, where would the Nets be now with LeVert and Allen?
Right. It is definitely interesting because, one issue with those two really was Allen was the cap space because, Allen was due for a big contract. He ends up getting it in Cleveland. But as you said, trading away those pieces helped free up space for Harden. So you got to imagine, who the roster definitely looks different, not only with Allen, but also in terms of the depth pieces that Brooklyn may or may not have. They have to turn to those G League players more now so than they have in the past, if Allen's there. It's definitely something I think came to my mind with that. But also, too, in terms of trade deadline moves, what moves could they make? Because of the Nets, they were so strapped for cash, you couldn't make many in this trade deadline. That's why they only made the one, and it was a huge splash, don't get me wrong. But like I said, it took a lot to move those pieces around.
You know what James Harden is? James Harden is a Lamborghini that you find in Craigslist at way below market value. And, of course, you see cars at way below market value on Craigslist, and they're usually scams. But in this case, the car's legit. It's existing. It's selling at the price. But the reason why it's selling at the price is because it's a lemon. It's just a bad example out of the factory, and things are constantly going wrong with it. Yeah. And it's had 3 owners already, and you're saying, "Oh, I'm getting a Lamborghini cheap." Yeah, nothing more expensive than a cheap Lamborghini. I'll tell you that. But right. That is what you're getting. Great when on his game, but he's in the shop 40% of the time. And I'm not just talking about physical injuries either. I'm talking about just not being there.
Right.
And
no, I agree. He made it even, when he was at his best, he was still making a lot of errors that on the court. I just remember a few bad turnovers. There's one where he was at half court and just for whatever reason just takes a back step and goes back over the line. It was just a dumb turnover. I think it was against the Magic that game. But yeah, he was just prone to those type of mistakes.
Available for a reason. Somebody with that talent is usually not available.
And the other thing, too, was, his injuries. We saw, obviously, he had hamstring problems coming in, and then he injured his other leg during the postseason last year. And him coming back, he hasn't been able to play at the same level we saw to him prior to the injury.
He's had good games. Remember, the Brooklyn Nets were like 29-15 at one point.
Yes. But, that coupled with, obviously, Kyrie Irving being there only half the time, if even that is an issue.
Even Adam Silver has questioned that because this, politics aside, this is a valid point. Valid point number 1 is that Kyrie Irving, because he's not vaccinated, is banned from playing in New York City, yet other players, visiting players from other NBA teams can come play in Brooklyn and not be vaccinated. where that is an incongruity that either needs to be rectified one way or the other. Either A, non-vaccinated players can play, or B, non-vaccinated players on the opposing team can't play either.
Yeah, that's such a huge disparity in the rule. I do agree. It's funny, Adam Silver kind of throwing himself in there because it has to do with the competitiveness of the games, right? He doesn't want to see a team like the Nets, who really should be a championship level team that only gets one of their star players to play on the road, right? And then that doesn't look good for the league as a whole.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
He's trying to force the hand of Eric Adams in the city there to change that rule.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is competitiveness is part of his job as commissioner to maintain top-to-bottom competitiveness in the league. Because prior to him taking over, as David Stern was transitioning power to him, there was a big problem, and still exists to a degree, where, the perfect example of the tale of two cities, 73-9 Golden State Warriors and the 12-70 Philadelphia 76ers. You can't have those extremes in the league. Okay, look, right. You have great teams, fine. I have no problem with great teams, but you can't have teams that bad. I used to say, in the 90s in particular, that if you want to see evaluate the state of the NBA, don't go to a Knicks game where they sold out every game for years on end. Go to a Net game where the place was half full.
Right.
Yeah, I think for the Nets too, it goes beyond just one player, two player not being available, but that depth. And I think they added onto it, and it looks better. I think seeing Seth Curry, he's delivered so far in the limited action. He's played for Brooklyn. Andre Drummond as well is the big that Brooklyn's really needed to not only clean glass, but also score inside because they get burnt day in and day out, against opposing teams inside because they don't got a lot of bigs outside of Kevin Durant. But yeah, it's definitely, I think, the depth pieces and seeing guys like Cam Thomas continue to step up, seeing those guys like Claxton, yes, stay healthy and step up. Obviously getting back Durant and Irving is going to be crucial as well to how far they go this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what transpires as the numbers have gone down so drastically here in February with COVID, if the rules will be changed. You're starting to see just a fatigue on the COVID rules in general where people want to see an end to all the mandates that have been put into place. So I think the kind of pressure that Silver was putting on Eric Adams, I don't think that's going to be the end of it. I think you're going to continue to see it and for a variety of reasons. But with Harden leaving, I think people love playing with him when you're winning and he's scoring points and all that other stuff, but he doesn't play any defense at all. And then it gets tiresome.
In today's NBA, you can get away with that. Because of all the restrictions on defenders, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
Not in the finals, though. You're exposed to it.
But, in the playoffs, it's a different story altogether. And you have to build the team to compete in the playoffs because it's great that you rack up a nice regular season record and you go one round and out. No, that's not going to work. But it is sad to see what happened to the Brooklyn Nets. They're in the 8th seed right now. They were, a month and a half ago, they were knocking on the door of the top.
Right. Yeah, they really got to step it up, I think. When they get healthy, obviously, it's going to be tough to touch them. But they got to stay healthy.
Now, the good news is they're 7 games behind in the standings from the 1.
Right.
That's 7 games separate 1 from 8. Mm-hmm. So, which also means you go on a 10-game losing streak, that's where you're going to wind up.
Right. You'll see it in the Knicks, too, where they've gone 2-8, and they've dropped from being around 6th seed to the 12th seed. Well,
you know what else? Okay. Contrast that with the Western Conference, with the Phoenix Suns at the top, and the Golden State Warriors at 42-17, a 7-12 winning percentage, and 6.5 games back. But 1 from 8 is 19.5 games. Okay, 2 from 8 is 13.5 games. So that's big. I mean, if you hover around 500, you'll probably make the playoffs. So usually the Clippers are 30-31 and then the 8th seed, but still.
Agreed. Yeah, there's really not a lot of breathing room in the East, and it's not, to me, that's really not going to change. And it's also going to be crucial for the Knicks to come out hot this post All-Star break, because if they don't, they're ultimately going to be, the next team eliminated as, teams go down one by one.
It's really going to be a free-for-all. And the Nets right now are in that free-for-all because they're only 3 games above 500. If they do what they're expected to do, they'll pull away again, but big what if. Right. But the Hornets, the Hawks, the Wizards, and the Knicks, Pacers, Pistons, and Magic are too far down, but you never know. But the Pacers are 20-40, forget it.
Right, but, they're done. No question there.
They're dead in the water. But these other teams are hovering around the 500 mark, and it could be a game of musical chairs toward the end.